Car fixer let go after 30 years. Weeks later, he comes back and everyone stops in shock. In a quiet little town called Willow Creek, where folks took life slow and steady, lived a man named Henry Brooks. He had worked 30 years in the same garage, fixing cars with hands covered in grease, bruised knuckles, and late nights under hoods. Henry had built that garage from nothing, turning a tiny shop into the best in town. People didn't just come to fix their cars, they came because they trusted Henry not to trick them. But today, none of that seemed to matter. Henry stood in front of the desk of a man named Victor Hayes, who took over the shop after old Mr. Thompson died. Victor was young, wore fancy suits, and cared more about money than people. He leaned back in his big chair, tapping a pen on the desk. "Sorry, Henry, it's just business," Victor said, his voice light, like he was asking for a cup of water. Henry's jaw tightened. 30 years, Victor. I trained most of the guys here. I kept this place going when Thompson was sick. And now you're kicking me out? Victor sighed, as if he was bored. Look, you're good at your job. No question. But times are changing. We need younger workers who are faster and take less pay. I've got bosses to answer to. It's not personal. Not personal? Henry felt his chest tighten. But he wouldn't let Victor see him break. So what now? Henry asked, keeping his voice calm. Victor shrugged. You pack up your tools and leave. There's a small paycheck for a few months as a thank you. Henry took a deep breath, his hands curling into fists. But he stayed cool. Victor wasn't worth his anger. He turned to the door. But before he left, he looked back. You're making a big mistake, he said, his voice low but strong. Victor laughed, shaking his head. We'll see about that. Henry walked out without turning back. At his work spot, his toolbox was already packed. The nameplate he'd had for years above his station was gone, like he'd never been there. The younger workers avoided his eyes, some looked sorry, others glad it wasn't them. Outside, the chilly wind hit his face as he stepped into the parking lot. His old truck waited in its usual spot, but today felt different. He wasn't coming back. Henry tossed his toolbox into the truck bed and climbed in. He gripped the steering wheel, staring straight ahead. 30 years of his life, gone in minutes. He started the engine, and it roared to life. He didn't know what to do next. Henry drove around for hours, the town lights blurring by. His hands stayed tight on the wheel, knuckles white. 30 years in one place. And now he had nowhere to go. It hurt deep in his chest, like a fire he couldn't put out. He hadn't just lost a job, he'd lost his purpose. Finally, he pulled into the driveway of his small house in Pine Lane, where he'd lived for 20 years. The porch light flickered as he stepped out, toolbox in hand. Inside, the quiet hit him hard. No engine noises, no smell of oil or metal, just silence. He set his toolbox on the kitchen table and sat down. His hands ran through his gray hair. He'd never planned for this. He always thought he'd retire from that garage, maybe teach young mechanics and pass on his skills. But Victor had taken that away in seconds. His eyes caught an old photo on the wall. It showed him and Mr. Thompson, the original owner, standing in front of the garage when it first opened. Thompson had been more than a boss, he'd been a teacher, a friend, someone who valued hard work and honesty. If he were alive today, he'd be ashamed of what happened. Henry looked away, his jaw tight. He needed to figure out what to do next. The next morning, Henry woke up early, as always. His body was used to the routine, getting dressed, heading to the shop, working until his hands hurt. But today, there was nowhere to go. He sat at the kitchen table with a cup of black coffee, staring at his rough hands. He'd never done anything else but fix cars. Then an idea popped into his head. He grabbed his phone and scrolled through his contacts. There had to be someone, a shop, an old friend, who needed a mechanic. He called number after number. Each time, he got the same answer. We're not hiring. Money's tight. We'll let you know. Henry sighed, putting the phone down. He'd never felt so useless. That afternoon, he drove around Willow Creek, stopping at every garage he could find. Some had young kids working, barely out of school. Others had owners who saw his age and turned him away. Hours passed, and with each rejection, his hope faded. As he sat in his truck outside the last shop, something caught his eye. A small, run-down garage on the edge of town, near Maple Road. The sign was so faded he could barely read it, and the lot was empty. But Henry knew the name. It once belonged to an old mechanic he'd worked with years ago. He drove over, curious. The building looked empty, but the door wasn't locked. Inside, it was a mess: dusty tools, broken cars, and a feeling of neglect. It looked like no one had been here in years. Then a spark lit up in Henry's mind. He'd spent 30 years building someone else's shop. Maybe it was time to build his own. Henry stood in the dusty garage, his boots on the cracked floor. The place smelled like old oil and forgotten dreams. He ran his hand over a rusty toolbox, feeling its history. This place had a story. The kind you couldn't buy, only earn. For years, he'd poured his heart into making Victor's shop the best. And what did that get him? Thrown out like trash. But this place was different. Henry pushed open the garage door. Sunlight poured in, lighting up the dust in the air. He could picture it: cars lined up outside, people bringing their vehicles to someone they could trust. His own shop. The idea made his heart race. But then he thought about the challenges. The place was a wreck. The tools were old, the lift was rusty, and the wiring might not even work. It would take a lot of money to fix, more than he had. And the biggest problem: customers. How would he get people to come when Victor's shop had all the business in town? Most of Henry's old customers still went there. Victor would make sure they didn't leave. Henry rubbed the back of his neck, wondering if this was a mistake. Maybe he was chasing a dream that couldn't come true. Then he heard tires rolling up outside. His stomach tightened. No one should be here. He stepped out and saw an old man getting out of a beat-up truck. The man's clothes were worn, his face wrinkled, but Henry knew him right away. It was Sam Carter, a mechanic legend from years ago. Sam had owned a shop that people traveled far to visit because he was the best. Henry had learned a lot from watching him work. Sam leaned against his truck, giving Henry a sly smile. "Heard you got kicked out," Sam said. Henry crossed his arms. "News spreads fast." Sam laughed. "Always does in a place like this." He looked at the garage. "So, what's your plan?" Henry paused. "I'm not sure I have one." Sam shook his head. "That's not the Henry Brooks I know. You're the best mechanic in this town. Always have been." Henry sighed. "Even if I fix this place, no one will come. Victor's got them all." Sam nodded, like he'd expected that. Then he walked to his truck, opened the back, and pulled out an old toolbox. "I say we change that," Sam said. Henry frowned. "We?" Sam grinned. "I may be old, but I can still fix an engine. And I've got something Victor doesn't." Henry raised an eyebrow. Sam patted the toolbox. "Loyal customers who've been waiting for a reason to leave that shop." Henry felt a flicker of hope. Maybe this could work. Henry stood there, looking at Sam, feeling the weight of the moment. This wasn't just talk, Sam was serious. And in 30 years as a mechanic, Henry knew men like Sam didn't waste time on lost causes. Henry glanced back at the dusty garage. "You really think people will come here?" he asked. Sam smirked. "They will if they know you're here. People are tired of Victor's tricks. They just need a reason to leave." Henry wanted to believe it. But starting a shop from scratch was hard. It needed money, tools, and equipment, things he didn't have. Sam seemed to read his mind. He opened his toolbox and pulled out an old checkbook. "I've got some savings, not a lot, but enough to get this place going," Sam said. Henry's eyes widened. "Sam, I can't take your money." "You're not taking it," Sam replied. "I'm investing in a shop that cares about people. You fix the cars. I'll handle the business." Sam clapped Henry on the shoulder. "We'll make this work." Henry swallowed hard. For the past 2 weeks, he'd felt like his life was over. But now Sam was giving him a second chance. He looked at the garage again, seeing it not as a mess, but as a shop full of life. He turned to Sam. "Okay, let's do this." And just like that, they had a plan. For the next few days, Henry and Sam worked hard. They cleaned the garage, wiping away years of dust and dirt. Sam called old friends, getting deals on used tools. Henry fixed the rusty lift, rewired the lights, and got the shop ready. Word started to spread. Some of Henry's old customers stopped by. Curious, they watched him work, remembering why they trusted him. One morning, a lady drove up in a van, looking worried. "I heard you're open," she said. "My car's making a weird noise. But Victor's shop said it'd take 2 weeks just to check it." Henry nodded. Opened the hood. In minutes, he found the problem, a loose part. An easy fix. When he gave her the keys back, she was shocked. Victor said I needed a big repair. He was going to charge me a lot. She said. Henry wiped his hands on a rag. You're all set. No charge for something so small. Her eyes lit up with gratitude. I'm telling everyone about this place. And she did. Soon, more cars started coming in. People complained about Victor overcharging them or doing repairs they didn't need. Henry and Sam worked hard, fixing cars honestly. Trust was coming back, but Victor wasn't happy. That evening, as Henry locked up, a fancy black car pulled into the lot. The door opened, and Victor stepped out. His face was hard to read, but his eyes were cold. Victor took a slow step forward. So this is what you've been doing, he said. Henry crossed his arms. You seem surprised. Victor smirked, but it wasn't friendly. You're making a mistake, old man. Sam stepped up beside Henry. The only mistake was thinking you could run a business by tricking people. Victor's jaw tightened. You won't last. Henry met his gaze. We'll see. Victor laughed coldly, then got back in his car and drove off. Sam sighed. He's not done yet. Henry nodded. He knew Victor too well. This was just the start. The next morning, Henry got to the shop early. Something felt wrong. As he got closer, his stomach dropped. The front door was open, the lock broken. His heart raced as he ran inside. Tools were everywhere, drawers pulled out, the cash box gone. His toolbox, the one he'd had for years, was missing. Sam ran in behind him, stopping in his tracks. No, Sam said, his face tight with anger. Henry clenched his fists. He knew who did this. Victor. It had to be him. Victor saw the shop doing well. Customers leaving his garage to come here. He'd warned Henry he wouldn't last. And now this happened. Sam kicked a broken stool. We need to call the police. Henry shook his head. We have no proof. He'll deny it. Sam was furious. So we just let this go? Henry looked at the mess. His chest heavy. No, he said. They wouldn't let it go. By noon, word had spread around Willow Creek. Customers came, shocked at the state of the shop. One lady, Mrs. Harper, crossed her arms. Victor did this, didn't he? Henry didn't answer, but his silence said enough. People whispered, shaking their heads in disgust. A few men stepped forward. We're not letting him get away with this. We'll help you rebuild. Henry's throat felt tight. He'd spent 30 years at a place that threw him out. And now, after just a few weeks, people were standing up for him. By the end of the day, the shop was cleaner than ever. Someone brought new tools. Another gave a new cash box. The town had spoken. Victor tried to break them, but he only made them stronger. But Victor wasn't done. That night, as Henry locked up, he saw a car parked across the street. Its lights were off, but someone was inside, watching. Henry turned to Sam. We need to be ready. He's not finished. The next morning, Henry got to the shop early, still thinking about the car from the night before. He had a feeling this wasn't over. As he stepped inside, he felt determined. Victor could try to scare them, try to stop them, but he wouldn't win. Sam arrived soon after, carrying 2 coffees. Did you sleep? Sam asked. Henry chuckled, shaking his head. Too much on my mind. Sam handed him a cup. Well, get ready. We're about to be busy. Henry frowned. What do you mean? Sam grinned, pulling out his phone. People are talking. Henry, news about what happened spread all over town. They know what Victor did, and they're done with him. Sam showed him messages. People want their cars fixed, and they want you to do it. Henry barely had time to think before a car pulled up. Then another, and another. Soon, the lot was full. One man stepped forward, shaking Henry's hand. I've gone to Victor for years. But not anymore. I'm not giving money to someone who hurts honest people. A lady behind him nodded. Me too. He charged me for a repair I didn't need. I should have come here sooner. Henry looked at the crowd. Overwhelmed. People weren't just bringing their cars, they were bringing their trust. For hours, Henry and Sam worked non-stop, fixing cars, changing oil, replacing tires. Every time Henry looked up, more cars arrived. The shop was buzzing, more alive than he'd ever dreamed. Then, as Henry wiped his hands on a rag, a familiar black car pulled into the lot. It was Victor. He stepped out, his face hard to read, but his eyes cold. For a moment, Everyone froze.